The pig was hungry. It pushed through a fence on San Juan Island, found a garden, and began eating potatoes. The farmer who owned the garden saw the animal. He was angry. This was not the first time it had damaged his crops. He took his gun and fired. Within weeks, American soldiers, British warships, and more than 70 cannons would face one another around the island. The dead pig had become an international crisis. And if one officer had followed an aggressive order, Britain and the United States might have started a war over a garden. The story began 13 years before the pig entered the garden. In 1846, Britain and the United States signed the Oregon Treaty. The agreement created a border across the western part of North America. On a map, the border looked simple until it reached the sea between Vancouver Island and the mainland. The treaty said the line should continue through the middle of the channel and then south to the Pacific Ocean. There was only one problem. There were two possible channels. The Haro Strait ran west of the San Juan Islands. The Rosario Strait ran east of them. If the border followed Haro, the islands belonged to the United States. If it followed Rosario, they belonged to Britain. The treaty did not say which one it meant. Both countries claimed the islands. The British Hudson's Bay Company established a large sheep farm on San Juan Island. British workers and officials treated the land as British territory. American settlers also arrived. They built homes, marked farms, and treated the same land as American territory. For several years, the two communities lived close together without open fighting. But the legal question remained. Who owned the island? Whose laws applied? Who could collect taxes or arrest someone? The answer depended on which side of an unclear sentence you stood. On June 15, 1859, an American settler named Lyman Cutler found a pig eating in his garden. The pig belonged to the Hudson's Bay Company and was connected with an Irish employee named Charles Griffin, who managed the British sheep farm. Cutler shot and killed it. He offered to pay for the animal. The two men disagreed about a fair price. Accounts of their exact words differ, but the private argument soon became a public question. The British side threatened to arrest Cutler. American settlers feared that British authorities would remove them from the island. They asked the U.S. military for protection. This is how a small conflict can get out of hand. When a situation gets out of hand, it becomes difficult to control and more serious than it should be. The dead pig was no longer only about damaged potatoes. It became evidence in a much larger argument about land, law, and national pride. The American military commander in the region was Brigadier General William Harney. He strongly supported American control of the island. Harney ordered Captain George Pickett to take soldiers to San Juan Island. On July 27th, Pickett landed with 64 men. His orders were to protect American settlers and prevent British authorities from interfering with them. The American force chose a position near the southern end of the island and began building a camp. British officials saw this as a military occupation of disputed land. They sent warships. More American soldiers arrived. By the end of August, there were 461 U.S. troops and 14 cannons on the island. The British had several warships nearby with more than 50 guns, as well as Royal Marines who could land if needed. The numbers were now far larger than the original population of settlers involved in the argument. Both sides prepared for battle. Guns faced possible targets. Soldiers waited for orders. Visitors even came by boat to watch the crisis. At the same time, some British and American officers continued to visit one another and share meals. The people preparing for possible war did not necessarily want one. The governor of the British colony of Vancouver Island, James Douglas, wanted the Americans removed. He instructed Rear Admiral Robert Baynes to land British forces on San Juan Island and confront the American soldiers. Baynes refused to begin a battle. He understood the size of the decision. If British Marines attacked American troops, the news would not remain on a small island. Two powerful countries could be pulled into a wider war. The United States and Britain had fought each other before. Their relationship was not free from tension. But neither national government had chosen this crisis. Baynes would not start a war over a pig. His refusal created time. Military discipline usually means following orders. But senior commanders also have a responsibility to understand the consequences of an order. In this moment, not firing was more important than winning the first move. The soldiers continued to wait. When news reached Washington, President James Buchanan was alarmed. The United States was already moving toward its own civil war. A conflict with Britain would be disastrous. Buchanan sent General Winfield Scott to the Pacific Northwest. Scott was old, experienced, and famous for solving difficult problems through negotiation. He traveled across the country and arrived in October. His task was to make both sides stand down. To stand down means to stop preparing for action, especially military action, because the immediate danger has passed. Scott met Governor Douglas. They did not solve the border question, but they found a temporary answer. Both countries would reduce their forces. A small American camp and a small British camp would remain on opposite ends of the island. Neither side would control the whole place. This arrangement became known as joint occupation. The cannons did not fire. The troops did not charge. The crisis slowly became an unusual peace. The temporary solution lasted for 12 years. American soldiers lived at the south end of San Juan Island. British Royal Marines built a camp at the north end. The two groups were not enemies in daily life. They visited each other, held sports competitions, and attended social events. The camps developed gardens, buildings, and routines. The question of ownership remained, but people stopped treating every day as the beginning of a battle. Finally, Britain and the United States agreed to let an outside person settle the dispute. To settle a dispute means to reach a final decision that ends a disagreement. The arbitrator was Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany. In 1872, an international commission considered the two possible border lines. The decision supported the American claim. The boundary would pass through the Haro Strait, west of the San Juan Islands. The British Marines left peacefully. The American camp also closed later. The border had been decided without a battle. The event is now called the Pig War, although that name became popular later. No British or American soldier died. No shot was exchanged between the military forces. The pig was the only casualty. That ending can make the whole story sound funny, and parts of it are strange. A hungry animal entered a garden. One farmer fired. Soon warships were waiting offshore. But the peaceful ending was not automatic. It depended on people who understood that national pride did not require them to fire first. Baynes refused to turn a dangerous order into a battle. Buchanan recognized the threat. Scott created a temporary agreement. For 12 years, the people in the two camps allowed an unfinished question to remain unfinished while diplomats searched for an answer. The original border language had left room for two interpretations. The crisis grew because each side treated its interpretation as the only possible truth. The solution began when both sides accepted something less satisfying. They would wait. Sometimes history changes because someone gives a powerful command. On San Juan Island, history changed because several people chose not to shoot. Get out of hand. It means to become difficult to control. Example, the discussion got out of hand when everyone started shouting. Stand down. It means to stop preparing for action because the immediate danger has passed. Example, the emergency team stood down after the building was declared safe. Settle a dispute. It means to reach a decision or agreement that ends a disagreement. Example, the two companies met to settle their dispute without going to court. Now tell the story back in your own words. An 1846 treaty did not clearly say which channel formed the border between Britain and the United States. Both countries claimed the San Juan Islands. In 1859, an American settler shot a British-owned pig that was eating his potatoes. The argument got out of hand, and American soldiers occupied part of the island. Britain sent warships and prepared Marines, but Admiral Baynes refused to begin a battle. President Buchanan sent General Winfield Scott to calm the crisis. The two countries reduced their forces and jointly occupied the island for 12 years. In 1872, international arbitration awarded the islands to the United States. No soldiers died. The only casualty was the pig. Pause now and retell the story without reading.